welcome to my first book review. Today I will be discussing Soseki Natsume's Kokoro, and let's just get into the plot, which can be found at the back of the book, so I can give you a quick rundown. And this review contains spoilers as it is a review, so if you're not into spoilers, I suggest you check my recommendation video of the same book. Set in the turbulent Meiji area, a chance encounter on a Kamakura beach irrevocably links a young student to a man he simply calls Sensei. Intrigued by Sensei's aloofness and wanting to know more about him, the student begins to call upon Sensei with increasing frequency. Eventually, Sensei and his beautiful wife open up their home and their lives to him. The young student graduates from university and is called home to his dying father, but the sensei draws him back to Tokyo with a letter of heartfelt confession. My initial thoughts on the book is that I thought it would be hard to read because it's set in Japan, so I expected a lot of heavy terminologies. But thankfully, there was a foreword and footnotes, so that made it much easier for me. And initially, the narrator, I couldn't really tell his or her gender, but then eventually it was revealed that he indeed was a he, and the narrator is actually nameless. As for the writing style, I thought that it was very well written, and it just shows that whenever you're writing a novel, you have to take it very slow, and it's like kind of like watching paint dry on a wall because it's really slow, but once the paint is dry, you'll be very happy. I'm not sure if that metaphor made a lot of sense, but if you just keep getting the highs in the book, then it's not gonna be very dynamic. There's not gonna be much tone in the book and a mood, I guess. So, some of the themes that were prominent in the book are self blame, love, skepticism, friendship, and death. So, as you may know if you've read the book, death is actually quite a big topic and it's something so sensitive, but I think that this book managed to tackle it in a very graceful way. It's not outright, it's not something that glamorizes suicide or death. So, that's just my personal opinion, but I think that was something that I liked about the book. So, to start, self blame, I learned that the book is quite existential. As with everything else, you could have an existential reading of it. But as a philosophy major, I saw that there were a lot of underlying themes of that. So it was quite enjoyable, and I might write a paper on it at some point. Who knows? So it shows that humans can take emotional baggage with them until death. So there's this line that says, I do not have the right to expect anything from the world. Sensei was the one who said that. So I guess this kind of stems from his self blame because initially he has a lot of quotes in parts 1 and 2 of the book, which you really can't see why he says it, but in his letter to the narrator, it explains a lot about why he has said those things. And it's just very sad because in the self blame part in my outline it says a man capable of love, or should I say rather a man who was by nature incapable of not loving, but a man who could not wholeheartedly accept the love of another. Such one was Sensei. And everything is actually exposed in the third part, which I really liked because, as I mentioned, when people write a book, they have to set the tone first, and then that's when they can get into the high dynamic of the book. Because parts 1 and 2 were pretty slow, and not in the dragging way, but the third part was when I was really able to piece everything together. As for love, this really showed innocent love and admiration, not just in the romantic way, but also in the friendly way, because it's evident that the narrator has such a big amount of admiration for Sensei, and I think that was something that can really show that sometimes we don't really need to be romantically in love with someone to for them to have such a big influence on our lives. And there's this quote from pages 25 to 26 that goes, You made fun of that couple, didn't you? but actually sounded to me like a person who is dissatisfied because he has not yet been able to fall in love, though he wants to. And I think that it shows something about how Sensei knows a lot about love, but he refuses to be loved, as in the quote which I mentioned a while ago. And another thing that this tackles is skepticism, because Sensei was actually betrayed by his uncle and his other family members. So basically, Sensei's parents passed away nearly at the same time. So the inheritance was given to his uncle and to his other family members, but they didn't keep their promise of giving it to Sensei when he needed it. So then that just made him totally lack trust in everything and everyone in the world. There's this line that says, I do not want your admiration now because I do not want your insults in the future. And I think this is something a lot of people can resonate with, because when we let our guard down to other people and we let them know very delicate parts of ourselves and we make ourselves very vulnerable, they tend to use it against us. That's just from my personal experience though, so I'm not sure about you guys if you feel like you can relate, but I sure did. For friendship, it really tackles the complexity of friendship and how sometimes people build walls around them to avoid talking about truths that they don't want to remember. So, Sensei has this friend called Kay, and that will be mentioned in the third part of the book. And they have a lot of weird moments, I'd say. So Sensei wouldn't agree with him usually, but they were still friends. They had that dynamic of being, you know, kind of benevolent to one another, very civil, but at the same time, I didn't really see the closeness. I felt like Sensei really cared about him because he took him under his care, but it just shows that even though we care so much for a friend, it doesn't mean we're always gonna get along well with them. And it's sharing life with the narrator basically in the third part of the book. And there's this quote that says, now I myself am about to cut open my own heart and drench your face with my blood. And I shall be satisfied if, when my heart stops beating, a new life lodges itself in your breast. So that's the last quote I will be mentioning in this book review, because it really sat with me that Sensei could not face the reality of what he has done or what he's caused. But then in the end, he chose to share these wisdoms with the narrator because he thought that the narrator could learn a thing or two from it. So I think that the new life he's referring to is how the narrator would have changed and become a new person, hence becoming someone that lives a new life. And I think that the last thing it tackles was death, because Sensei wrote the letter and he sent it mentioning that by the time you've read this letter, I would have probably been dead. So it's just very sad, and it's a great book actually. I found myself flipping through the pages very fast, and I think that says a lot because I haven't read a novel in a long time. I'm more used to reading academic articles since I'm on my thesis term, but this book was a really refreshing read and it was great. I really couldn't stop flipping through the pages, so I would highly recommend this. And I got it for 760 pesos from Manila International Book Fair, which was quite a few months ago. And I rate it a 5 out of 5 stars in total. And that's all I have to say about the book. It was actually a really great read, and I'm so sorry if I'm not as clear as and concise as I'd like to be, but I think I should improve on that if I end up uploading more videos. So, thank you so much for reading this book review, and I'll see you in my other videos.